here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, I thought it was time to do an updated version on how I mark my jars, lids, whether it be just for vacuum sealing, canning, or simply for storage of my goods. And this is all going to depend on the types of lids I have, what I'm storing, and how I'm storing it, and what is most easy for me to see. So let's start off with the lids. If you're marking your lids themselves, especially for canning, it's going to vary depending on the type of lid you're using. So for example, right here I have some metal lids. These are the Superb brand lids, the only ones I like to use now, and highly recommend them. Always have a link in my description box now. And you can save 20% on these canning lids made 100% in the US. So anyway, when it comes to metal lids of any kind, I simply mark with a Sharpie. I don't use a dry erase marker because that's going to come off too easily. I want something that's going to stick, but yes, I can easily remove it when needed if I want to recycle the lids to use for vacuum sealing, which is funny. I didn't bring out any vacuum sealed jars out here, but I do reuse metal lids all the time for vacuum sealing. In fact, most of the time, that's all I'm using for vacuum sealing is recycled lids. So how I then clean it off is also going to be important, but I'll get to that in a minute. So as you can see here on the plums I put up, I just marked directly on the lid. But when it comes to the Tatler lids, the plastic reusable lids, I don't like using the permanent marker directly on them because of the texture of the lid. They're just slightly textured. They do not clean off near as easily as your metal lids do. So in that case, I do use masking tape to mark my lids. And yes, just regular masking tape will peel off. Some people like to use painter's tape because they say it comes off easier. I've had absolutely not one bit of issue getting masking tape off my lids or even off the jars themselves, and have not had any issue with a residue being left behind. I sometimes will also use Scotch tape, but I prefer using the masking tape, especially because you can get it a wider width, like a 2-inch or something, and make it easier for marking. And the other reason I like using the masking tape is that the blue painter's tape is generally more expensive, where I can get masking tape for really cheap. And you can see here on this lid, this is another one, because it's both textured and it's dark, I use tape. So this is one of my most recent tinctures. This is the Mullen Usnea Astragalus tincture. So I like to use masking tape in that case for any kind of lid that's going to have a texture. Now, some types of plastic lids like this, I could write on and easily clean off because it's very smooth. It has no texture to it. But in this case, I still like to write on the jar directly because of how I have it stored in the cabinet. This is going to be far more easy for me to see. And on top of that, I typically know by the color of the lid, when I'm using the color of lids in this case, what's in there. But just to make sure, because I do have several jars that have orange lids, I still like to write on there so I know. So I can see the lid color and then I can double check the writing on there and make sure. Or in case I forget that I've got heavy cream in the royal blue and the cream cheese powder in the turquoise blue. So these are both dairy powders. In fact, all these are powders. The cheddar I've made myself. I've made cream cheese powder, but I've tried making the heavy cream powder and it doesn't work. Just regular dehydration. It might work with freeze drying though. Now, in all these cases, I am using a permanent marker. So then the question is, well, how do you remove it? Now, you'll hear a lot of people talk about this bright idea of using the dry erase marker to color over the permanent marker and then wipe it off. And yes, that works, but I don't do that for a couple of reasons. One, you're going to get black on your dry erase marker if you're using a colored dry erase marker, and dry erase markers are not cheap in comparison to simply buying rubbing alcohol, cheap old rubbing alcohol, and putting it in a spray bottle. So that is what I use. It's a lot cheaper. And I'm not wasting my dry erase markers on trying to clean off my lids. So just for demonstration purposes, let me go ahead and write something on this lid, since this is a Superb lid. All right, Superb. Some of their lids are totally blank. Some of them have printing on them, and some of them are embossed. So we'll let that dry for a minute, and then I'll, just to make sure it's really on there. And then here's another example of a plastic lid that I wouldn't write on because it is also textured, not smooth like this one here. So this is one, if I wanted to mark on the lid itself, I would use a piece of masking tape or just write on the jar. So anyway, so you can see that it's on there. All right. Now, why wouldn't I simply use a scouring pad or something to scrub it off? Well, because if I do that, it's gonna put little abrasions in the lid. And if I want to keep using this lid over and over and over again, eventually what's going to happen is it's going to get harder and harder for me to get the permanent ink off the lid, the same as if I directly write onto one of my Tatler lids or any of these other lids that have any kind of texture to them. I know this because when I first started using the Tatler lids, I was writing directly on the lid, and I have tried many ways, many things to remove the ink, and you could still see the print. Not been able to get it off. So that is why I would never scrub my lids. Now, I can clean them off with a soft cloth when I want to go wash them, but I do not scour them or scrub them. So in this case, this is going to be a lot better deal. So I simply spray just a tiny bit of rubbing alcohol in there, rub it in with my finger, take a dry cloth, wipe it off. Look at that. Comes right off. Same thing goes with the jars. Now on your glass, you actually can wipe it off with just your finger. It's still, you can still see the C, but it's lighter. And the more you rub on that, the more it's going to come off. Even with soap and water, you can typically just clean like here's my rosemary vinegar. You can usually just clean this off with a regular dishcloth and some soap and water. But if you have a hard time getting it off, same thing would apply. Simply spray a tiny bit of rubbing alcohol on there, rub it in with your finger, and wipe it off. And no more ink on there. So that is why I use a Sharpie. If I was to use a dry erase marker on there, you could just look at it and it would come off. So this is why I stick with the Sharpie. So anyway, that is personally what I like to do. I know some people like to use wax pencils and various other things. This is just my method. It's what I prefer. I've tried many different things over the years. This works best for me. So just some little tips there, and having a bottle of rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, in a spray bottle makes a lot of things easy for cleaning any kind of ink off of anything. Oh, by the way, this also applies to cleaning ink off of material. You know how people talk about using hairspray? Why use hairspray? Do you know what the active ingredient is in the hairspray to remove ink from clothing and anything else? It's the isopropyl alcohol. So that's all you got to do. This is cheaper than hairspray, unless of course you're making your own hairspray, which I do, but I don't use rubbing alcohol in my hairspray because it's really bad for your hair. And by the way, if you want to see that video, I'll link to it in the description box down below so you can learn how to make your own hairspray. I don't wear it a lot, but sometimes when I want to put my hair back and those crazy gray hairs just want to go everywhere, little hairspray, hold it in place, and it's all natural. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, gave you some ideas. Any thoughts, ideas you'd like to share, please put them in comments down below. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.